So we all know that Oomph has an amazing number of built-in widgets and features, and I know it's hard to believe, but there comes a time when not even Oomph has the particular functionality you want for your special project. We also know that Oomph allows us to use a lot of different format files such as PDF, PNG, but Oomph also lets us add HTML as independent layers into any Oomph section folder. So in this webinar, I hope I can show you clearly how HTML5 interactivity can enhance your pages, how you go about adding an HTML layer to a section, the different programs that I use to output Oomph-friendly code, and some places where you can find pre-built widgets to add to your projects. And if we have time along the way, maybe some tips and tricks. So I'm going to start by showing you how to add HTML to a project. So let's open Dreamweaver. So here's a really simple little HTML page. Okay, for those of you who are not too familiar with HTML code, it might look a bit daunting at the beginning, but really it's quite simple. What we've got here in the HTML file is a block of code called style, and this is really defining how the style in this page looks. Here's the background color, here's the color of our text, here's the font we want to use, etc. And things like here, image float left, this just pushes this image to the left of this text. So down in the body, here's the information that we see in the window over here. Okay, so this is just a straight HTML file. And I've saved this as in an Oomph folder as b1.html, and all I've got next to it is the fire.png that's going to get loaded into the page. So if I drag that into Oomph, we can see straight away there's our HTML page rendered in the iOS simulator. Now, because it's a B page, it has all the same attributes. If I rotate it, it fits into that page there. So what we're seeing here is the background of the page, and this is what's called a div with content in it. Now, if we come back quickly into Dreamweaver again, we've got some parameters around this div box. Again, we've got a margin of 15, we've got a solid black line around it, we've got a width of 720 by 290 and a background color. That's why when we see it in Oomph or the iOS simulator, it's got this border around it because that's defined inside the HTML file. So adding an HTML file to Oomph is as simple as that. Just name it as you would name any other file. So because it's just an ordinary file, then we can do other things as well. We can apply animation to it. So for instance, in this example here, I'm using the same file, but I'm applying a move in from top animation to it. I'm also I've moved it to the second layer because I'm using a PNG as my background. And then once again, we've got the fire PNG that we'll use inside the HTML code. So let's just take a look and see what this looks like. Okay, so now I've got my background. The file above it has animated in, but we're not seeing the yellow background of the HTML. So I'll quickly open this in Dreamweaver, and we can take a look and we can see the difference. So here's the first one, and you can see in the first one we're defining in the style sheet a background color. In the new one, we've simply taken that line out completely. So the background now doesn't have any color at all. And of course, we know what happens when we put a second layer in Oomph. The background is dropped out. So when we come back and look at this file, that's what we're seeing here, is the background's dropped out completely on it. Let's go to another one, which I call combination 2. And where we're making the HTML transparent. So we'll drag that onto Oomph. So we've got the same animation, But this time the HTML comes in as transparent. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so what's the difference between the one before and this one? Well, let's come down to the div text box, and that's this box here. And if we look in here, we'll notice in here that the div text box doesn't have a background color assigned to it. I've taken out that background color. So now it's transparent. I've also taken off the solid line. So you see all we've got now is the width and the margin, which gives us a result like this. Okay, let's go one more step, and what we're going to do now, we're going to add a tint background to the piece of HTML that comes in. Okay, so now we've got a tint background, so let's look how that's done. We'll open this one up into Dreamweaver. Our div text box is still the same, but what I've done down here, I've added a class called .tinted. And to define the background color, I defined it as a red, green, blue alpha set of numbers. So I'm saying I want 0 for the red, 0 for the green, 0 for the blue, and 0.2 for the alpha. So for instance, if I was to change that to 0.8, it would become much darker. 0.1, it would become very light. 0.2 gives me the amount of tint that I prefer. Just to quickly cut in, is everything going at speed? Everybody keeping up with it? So Oomph does a fantastic job of interpreting the HTML and CSS to faithfully represent it in the Oomph browser. And I think you can see from that it's looking exactly as what we've defined in the HTML. So let's look at extending our options by putting this HTML into an in-page slideshow. So I'm just going to, I'll just close these ones up first. And we'll just hide Dreamweaver here. Okay, putting it into an in-page slideshow. Let's look at the file structure here. So we've got our background file, our B1-1. Then I've got a B1-2, and this simply holds the IPS field. And then inside the IPS1, we've got the HTML in the file. So let's load that into Oomph. Now, it's not exactly what we expect to see, because all of a sudden now I've got these huge spaces on either side of my HTML. Well, this is a small bug, would you believe? But it's one that's on the bug fix list, and I'm hoping that it's going to get fixed very soon, because this is something I use quite a lot. So what happens here is that the bug is that any HTML file added to an object, whether it's an IPS1 or a VIPS1 or what have you, is reduced by about 37%. So we need to actually, until the bug's fixed, just need to compensate for that. So in this example, I want the grey area to fill my slideshow. So I'll show you how I go about doing that. So I'm going to open it back up into Dreamweaver. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remove the border around it. So I simply get rid of that, and then there's no border left on it. I'm going to set the width of the body to compensate for the size to 950. So if we come up to here, so I'm going to set an attribute in here of width, 950 pixels, right? Now I'm going to set the height of the body to 100%. Okay, so it's made this is just the page we're dealing with now. It's made the page bigger. It's 950 by 100% high. Then I'm going to come down to the div, because I know that 950 is how big I need to make it to fit. And I'm going to come down to the div, and I'm going to set the width now to 100%. I'm just going to say, fill that page completely. And I think I probably have to take that margin off too. So I'm just going to pull the margin out. And I'm going to set the height to 705 pixels. So I'm using a combination of making the page 100%, making the page a fixed width, but then making the div fit that page, etc. Sam's not going to use it until the bug's fixed. Yeah, if you can get around it, it's just that a lot of the stuff I do, I use a lot of sort of HTML stuff, so it's fine. I'm used to it, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be fixed very, very shortly. Okay, so those are the changes we made. So we just simply we'll save as. Yeah, Sam, I've got so much time. We just then save it back out. Now, I've got one I've done previously, so I'm just going to hide that. We'll come back into here, and I'll quickly show you. This is the one I did before. Dreamweaver. Oh, not that one. Dreamweaver. Okay, so you can see here, this is one with the 950 width, 100% height. Okay, we've got a margin left and a margin top of 0, 0. And down in my div, I've put the 100, the 750. I've still got a little bit of padding inside it and a margin at 0. So when we drag this one into the browser now, into Oomph, okay, so there's our first one without any correction, and when I slide across, there's my HTML fitting inside an in-page slideshow. So once again, just remember that this is a bug, it's a known bug, it's on our list to be fixed, and I'll let you guys know as soon as it's done. Okay, let's just come out of here. Okay, I'm going to stop in between sort of sections that I'm working on, and if there are any questions, go ahead and ask it. Okay, Eugene is asking, does the width in the HTML have to match the width of the object? No, it doesn't. You can set that to whatever size you want. The thing is that if you're using a colored background in the HTML file, that colored background will fill it regardless of what size you put in there. The thing what I would suggest is really just play around with changing some sizing to make it fit. And I'm actually going to show you in the next section where I talk about the panoramas how I use the page size to define what's seen. Do we have any other questions? If not, we shall move on to adding interactivity via HTML. Yeah, Eugene, I think this next section will sort of explain it to you. So when I was introduced to Oomph, the concept of multi-layering elements of different formats really blew me away. I'd been attracted to digital publishing as a way of presenting my 360-degree panoramas. And really my first foray into Oomph was to add an HTML5 overlay that included a panorama. And I have to say I was completely unprepared for how well it worked. In fact, it's worked so well that I actually have a number of projects involving panoramas that I'm building now, apps for different people. And in fact, on Saturday, I'm off to Borneo on a chartered cruise to shoot panoramas for an app that we're building during the cruise. So for those of you who are not familiar with my panoramas, I'm going to show you an example. Okay, so this is a little set of panoramas I did on a recent trip up to the Russian Far East. And this is a church in Korsakov. And if I pan around, you'll see it's a full 360 panorama. You can look all the way around, and you can look up to the top, and you can look all the way down. So this is what I do. Now you'll notice there's a couple of other interesting things. And this is one of the things I really love about Oomph. Even though this is an HTML overlay, the beauty of it is there are other elements overlaying the field as well. So I've got the image that sort of sticks up over the edge here, and then I've got this little audio player that sits over here. Now this audio player is actually HTML as well, because there's a couple of little things in here that I really like. So to me, this is this beautiful sort of immersive way of overlaying all these different layers inside Oomph. Just really appeals to me. While we're in the church too, at the same time I was in there doing these photographs, there was the priest and a couple of parishioners who were actually chanting at the same time. So I have a little recorder I carry with me, and this is the chanting that I recorded. So I'm just going to tap this and play. Now I don't know if you can hear that sound or not. Can you hear the sound through the Connect? Ah, cool. So check out this little recorder. It's very cool. So what it's doing, it's giving us a little band is appearing around the outside that's showing us how much of the recording is left. So I can stop it and I can play. And in the third session of this webinar, I'm going to show you how you can do this and add these to your own Oomph pages. And it's quite a cool little thing. So this ability of the Oomph platform to enable interactivity via HTML overlays really means the sky's the limit in terms of what you want to do. So I'm going to show you a, let's see here if I've got a schematic. Well, let's first of all, I'm just going to drop this on here, because this is the file we're going to talk. This is like a bare bones version of it. And just come back to the color. Okay. So this is really like the bare bones of it. So I've stripped everything else away, and really all I've got on here is the panorama itself. So I'm just going to quickly show you a schematic of what that looks like. So this is how the page is constructed. Let me come over to my file folder here, and we'll open it up so you can see as well. So inside here, on the first one, the p1.1.html, this is the area that I want my panorama to sit in. Now, I don't want it to extend into this bottom area because I want to put some interactivity in there, and I want to have somewhere for people to swipe. So one of the things you have to be careful of is when you're putting HTML overlays, okay, if they're on the top level, then if somebody, well, especially with panoramas, if you've got something that moves inside it with a touch, then they're not going to be able to swipe. So in this instance, I only want the HTML to cover a certain area. And Eugene, I think this will answer your question about the sizing. Now, what I want to is I want an alternative version so that when somebody rotates the iPad, basically it fills the screen. To achieve this, I've got a couple of extra files. I've got two XML files, pano.xml and panol.xml. So these, and I'll show you in a sec, these are just descriptions of how the panorama should be presented. At the same time, I've got a couple of JavaScript files. I've got a player JavaScript and a gyro JavaScript. Because if you go and download this app, and if you want to download the app, if you search on the App Store, it's just called Red 360, and there's a space between it, Red space 360 space panoramas. And you can see all these panoramas if you download it, it's free. When you pick up, the important thing for me was that when people go to one of these pages, they see movement in the panorama so that they realize that it does move, that you can spin it. So the gyro is always active for me. So as when somebody picks up the iPad, it's moving. Then the other thing is we have a folder with the images in it. So basically the way panoramas work, we end up with a series of cubes, and then those cubes are stitched into a sphere and then presented. So it's pretty simple in its structure. I do all my preliminary testing in Safari. So if I want to check this in Safari, I'll simply open with Safari. And there it is, works in Safari. 9 times out of 10, if it works in Safari, it's going to work in Oomph. So then, obviously after that, we go and test in iOS Simulator. So let's look at a couple of these smaller files here. So this is the XML file for the panorama. Now, once again, it may look a little complicated, but it's not really. It's an XML file, which is a pretty simple file. And this first section here, from view to end of view, this is really just setting some of the parameters. It's setting, like, what it's saying to me, like for instance, this one here, is from the original file, what degree do you want to start at? You know, do you want to start at 60 degrees? At this point, I'm starting at 0. The second one is, what's the tilt? How far up or down are we looking to start with? And basically, these are preference settings for how I want it to initially appear. Okay, and what's the initial viewpoint? You know, the field of view. How much can I see? So at the moment, I'm zoomed in a little bit from the original. The next two really just say, like, how much can I move in and out of this file? You know, so how far up can I go? How far down? How far in and out? The next one here, input tile size. This really just defines the different tiles that I'm using to make up the panorama. And then down here I've got a few little sort of control things of, you know, does the wheel work this way? Does it work that way? What's the speed? Can they use keyboard, etc.? So basically that's the XML file. Now I have a different one for the landscape, because when you tilt at landscape, I want it to start in a different point. So basically that's all it is that change. And then obviously we've got these two JavaScript files, here and here, and they look like standard JavaScript files. Now you'll notice that, you know, I have licensed this, and once again, when you're starting to use these sort of things, if you're using like professional products, you really need to make sure that you purchase the product and you get the license. So for me, you'll see here that I use a thing called garden-known software. Well, garden-known software is actually referred to as Pano2VR to create the code. And I'm going to show you how I use Pano2VR to make my panorama files and to create the code that I use in Oomph. Let's just hide simulator here. And I'm going to come down here to my Pano2VR. Okay. So this is the dashboard. I've loaded my file. Now, when we work inside, when we do panoramas, we create these files called equirectangular files. Sorry, my secondary monitor just went to sleep there, so I just had to turn off. Yeah, so these are what we call equirectangular files, and they're amazing files because they actually show you everything in the 360 form, just flattened out into one file. So if I took this into Photoshop and I moved one edge to the other, they would simply line up and seam. Okay. Down here are some viewing parameters, and I can come in here and it's going to give me an example. And you notice as I'm moving this, it's setting the different pan and tilts. Okay. And these are what would appear in the XML file. So I simply set it to where I want. I set the zoom. So remember at the moment I said I'm at 110. You know, so I zoomed out something like that to give a nice bit of depth to it. So then what we do is we create, over here, we create our output. So inside this version, we've got Flash, HTML5, QuickTime or transformation. For what I want to do is I want to use, obviously, HTML5. You simply say add, and then you set a number of parameters. So I'm going to come in here and just show you the parameters that I've set for this particular panorama. So I'm setting a cube face here because I'm building for the iPad. I'm setting a cube face of about 978, which is sort of a good optimal size. You know, too big and there's not enough memory to render it, and you'll just end up with black. Too low, and there's just not enough quality. Then I'm defining the image quality here, and one of the cool things you can do is you can actually define different quality levels for different parts of your panorama. So traditionally, like looking down tends to not have as much resolution as front-facing panels. So you can actually define it and change those there. Me, I tend to leave it as is. Then in here I'm defining a name. It's called 1000 only because I've got my XML files already done, and I used to do them at 1000 and I've changed that. Then we define what the face names are called. There's different options here. I use the F for front, U for up, D for down. Then what I'm doing over here is I'm defining a window size of 768 by 768 pixels. Okay, because remember I showed you on the schematic, I don't want the HTML to fill the whole page. So I'm going to set a window size of that. I'm not going to have any auto rotation. I've got no skin that I want to use on it. And I define my output file. In fact, I'm going to start a brand new one and I'll show you how it works. So we'll come into the Pano project, new folder, 20-Pano new. And this will show you how going straight from here, from the application, you can load it straight into Oomph. Okay, so this is where we want to save it. We go to advanced settings. Here's where we can set some of those settings we saw in the XML file, the sensitivity, the movement, the mouse, whether we want to allow them to use keyboards, etc. Hotspot text box, I've got none of those, so I'm not worrying about that. If we were building for both iPhone and iPad, we can create alternate views here. So at the same time, I can create a whole set of smaller files to use on the iPhone. In this case, I'm not going to worry about it. And then we go into our HTML because I want it to create an HTML file. I'm using a standard template. I've told it to include gyroscope control. If I was building this for, say, an Android or to use on Android as well, I could put a flash panorama fallback. In this case, I'm only interested in the iPad. Nothing else is checked down here. Format HTML file, HTML, and I'm going to put it into that same 20-Pano. Okay, it's going to ask me if I want to create the output file, and what it's doing now, it's creating the cube faces, it's creating XML file, and it's popping up a browser to show me exactly what it's done. It's got this funny little jiggle because of the gyro. So if we come and look at the code, so here's the code, 20 schematic, where are we? Pano project, 20, this is the one we've just done. So you see here it's generated all my images for me. It's cut that equirectangular into 6 cubes. It's created the p1-1.html file. It's created the Pano XML file and the 2 JavaScript files. So if I was to, we'll just hide that, we'll come back to our simulator. Just rotate that. We'll open up Oomph. So if I was to drag that 20-Pano new onto here, rotate you, there's our file in Oomph. Okay, now it doesn't look quite the same because we've got a big border at the top and a thin border at the bottom. That's because the HTML file they generate has a bunch of code that I don't really want in it. So all I would do next, I'd open it up into Dreamweaver and then basically come in and strip out pretty much all of this. Okay. In fact, I'll show you what we end up with. So I'm just going to close these ones up here, and I'm going to show you the first one we saw. So here is the simple one. Let's open this up into Dreamweaver. Okay, we'll just look at the code. And we'll tile those side by side. Okay, so here you can see the difference between the code that's output by pano2vr, 76 lines, and here's my code, 27 lines. So you can see what I've done. I suppose I've really simplified it and taken out a lot of things I don't need. So for instance, I don't need the hide URL bar function. So that just simply gets taken out. My styles are very simple. Okay. So usually here's that question about how does it fit. So what I've done here, there's a couple of ways. What I've done is basically I've defined the width as 768 and 1024 for the body, but my container, the div that the file sits in, is 768 by 769. So I'd always sort of set the body to be the size of the page it's going to fit into, or the object it's going to fit into, but then make the container where your content will be, sized to what you want, because then you can move the container around inside the HTML file. Then basically down here, this is a little piece of JavaScript that just creates the container. So once we've got this, there's our page. It's really then just a matter of adding in the rest of your assets, your PDF pages, your action hotspots, and whatever else you have on top of that, until you end up with something like this. So here, I've got a background, I've got the panorama over the top, and then I've got different objects, for the pop-ups. So once again, if I just drop that onto there. Sorry, I need to actually do the whole folder, because notice here I'm actually using a number of shared layers, and if you remember our webinar from last week, the shared assets are a fantastic thing. So the reason it didn't load anything is because I didn't load any of my shared assets. Okay, so that's better. So I've got the little file up here that animates. I've got the audio, and we can see the audio is actually in here somewhere, or in the IPS. So there's the little audio file. Okay, so that's the second part of adding interactivity. Anybody have any questions? Okay, no questions. So, hold on, Raymond is typing something. The video has gone blank. That's because I'm not sharing anything at the moment. Can you still see you can still see the chat though? Okay. Would anybody like to be able to do looping video in Oomph? In fact, I had an email from somebody the other day that said, I was thinking of making a page with a small auto-playing video looping somewhere in the page. Is this possible? Well, using HTML overlays, it certainly is possible. Okay, and let's come back. This is our third one now. This is programs that output Oomph-friendly code. So obviously pano2vr was one of those programs. Okay, so I'm going to close that up, and we're going to our next example, which is a looping video. Not a looping video, but it's looping. Okay, so let's take a look at it and see what we end up with. And there it is, autoplay looping video inside Oomph. Pretty cool. And if I slide across, one of the sort of issues that we've had in the past with using like these sort of auto-start things and repeating things inside Oomph is the problem with caching, that when I don't know if any of you have seen the caching information on Learning HQ, and I'd recommend having a read of it because it's a fantastic sort of developer overview of how Oomph caches files. One of the problems is if you run a piece of JavaScript and you come back to it and it's been cached, it doesn't play again. In this case, we only have 2 pages in here, and you notice if I come back into here now, in a second it'll start playing again. There is no caching issue whatsoever. Anytime if you jump to this page from somewhere, anywhere from next to it, 2 pages ahead of it and back, it will always work. Okay, so let's have a, and this, I have to say, this is so easy to do, so easy to do. It does require that you get into the program, and obviously it's one of the things that we have in our feature list, to do looping videos. So probably by the time I finish this webinar, the developers will have actually coded it into Oomph, but it'll be totally redundant. Anyway, for now, while we don't have it, here's a way to do it. And for what we use is we use a program called Tumult Hype. I'm just going to hide that, and I'll come down to my little program here called Hype. Okay. And this is Tumult Hype. So basically what Tumult Hype is, it's a bit like, if you guys ever use Flash, it's a bit like Flash except that it outputs HTML5 code. So it's got a little timeline, you can do movement, you can do animations, you can do all sorts of tricky sort of stuff in it, and bang, output HTML5. So I'm going to just open the project that I've got here. I've saved it here called TV Loop Hype, and show you what we've got. Yeah, we've got a question from Alison. Can you use Hype to create animating graphs? Certainly can. Yep, that's one way you would do it. And here you can set up timelines. So for instance, what I've done here is I've just taken this video. So let's have a look at this our assets. So basically, I've got this IPv4 file. So if I double click on it, so this is just downloaded from iStop. So it's a little 15-second play. Just one of those like standard files that you can get, and it's going to stop when it gets to the end. Now inside my InDesign, I've and I can probably show you here. Let's open InDesign. Okay. So here's my container, 380 by 216. This is the size I want the video to be in the page. Okay. So my background page is this. It's got a couple of files in it, and this is what I want the background to be. And then over that, I'm going to put the video, the looping video. Then over the top of that, I'm going to put another screen that will allow me to see through to that video. Okay, so those are the different layers. So I know how big my video is going to be. I know it's going to be 380 by 216. So I come into Tumult Hype and I simply define a page that's that same size. Then I take my video and I drag it in and drop it into place. Now if I move through the timeline, the video plays. But we don't even have to worry about doing any of that at all. All I need to do to create looping video is to select that, come over to my element inspector over here, and this shows me all the different elements of it, select the object, simply come down to the bottom and say autoplay and loop. And that's it. That's all I have to do. I'm done. So then I simply file and I export as HTML5, and I'll stick it in a folder, which is put on the desktop. We'll call it, my loop. And inside that, we'll just put a 10- cover. And we'll save it as ping1-1.html and hit save. And that's it. it's generated the code. We'll hit this, look in here, there's an HTML page. So if I double click it in Safari, we'll see it running in Safari. Now we'll just let it go, it should loop all the way around. Okay, yep, so it loops all the way around. Let's just hide that. If we want to see what that looks like inside Oomph, we can do the same thing. So we'll just open up Simulator and Oomph box, and I'm just going to drag Tintosh cover into there. Oops, hang on a sec. Okay, why is that not working? Tintosh cover. I've just got too many HTMLs in there. Ah, there we go. So that's it, running in Oomph. So all we really need to do now is put it in an object and put it in the right place in our document. Pretty cool. Now, the trick though is to stop Oomph from caching the pages, or that when we come back to this page, that we get the video to play again. And here's the little trick to do that. Sort of an undocumented feature. And if I just come into the final, okay, so you can see the way that I've done it here. I've got a couple of little things going on. I've got a show animation. I'll put this file up online so you guys can see it and analyze it and go through it. But I just want to show you the HTML that I'm using. So we'll open this with Dreamweaver. Close these ones off. Okay, so this is the HTML code, and once again I've cleaned it up and taken out everything that I don't really need in there. And here's the trick, this little line here. Script text, so it's a little bit of JavaScript. Now there's a function. So every time you come into a page or leave a page in Oomph, this function is called, and the application doesn't. Oomph view became active. So what I'm saying here is that when I see this function, Oomph view became active, which is every time I come into a page, reload the page, or this window here, window location reload, which means it reloads the script, which in effect restarts everything again. So what happens with caching, when you play it and come out of caching, it's already run the script, you come back in, it doesn't restart it because it's in cache. By putting this little function in, every time I come in, it will restart the page. So when we look at this file here, what it's doing now, it's saying reload the page. I come back out, I come back in, it's saying reload the page. Now the frame and show animation, these are just little tricky things to get around the fact that when you load HTML, you'll sometimes get a little spinner showing. So, and I don't want to see the spinner, so I'm using hotspot animation to bring the full files in and show them and hide them, so I don't see any of that. So I'm in effect preloading the video before I show it. Okay. Okay, any questions? Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Yeah, I think it's it's so simple, and I think I've only hardly scratched the surface of Tumult hype at all. Cool. What did you call the hyperlink in the InDesign file to display the video? Hyperlink in the InDesign file to display the video. Okay, this is what Tumult Hype generates for me. I haven't changed this at all. This is sort of simply output this, and this is what plays the video for me. Okay, so what happens is that the output from Tumult Hype generates its own piece of JavaScript, and that JavaScript obviously has the instructions to do the auto start and to do the looping. So there's no really sort of specific URL. It's not like, you know, where you point to a video. To auto animate an in-page slideshow, yeah, you can do the same thing in Hype. You can set up a slideshow in there that's auto starts and runs. Yeah, so it'd be great. I think you know, if people play around with it, if you've got some examples of stuff you do, please send it to me. I'd love to see what you're doing. Okay, if there are no further questions, because we're running out of time, I'm going to show you about using pre-built widgets, and in fact the audio player, which is very cool. So let's just hide that. We finished with that. Once again, remember these files are going to be up online for you to have a look at. It's coming to here, to the audio player. Right, so what have we got here? Lots of cool stuff. So the next project uses pre-built code that you guys can just buy online. It's a cool little MP3 player that can be reskinned, and when playing, it gives you this visual indication of the length of the audio currently playing. Let me show you a sample file that I've built using that. And this one here. Okay, just once again a little tip here. If you're working in one orientation, don't forget to use shared layers default. Okay, so that means that it just uses one page as a default all the time if you want people to rotate the iPad. So we slide in here. So here's a picture of the church, and I've got a little tab in the corner here that when I tap on the tab, it slides out and gives me some information about the church. And if I scroll down, I've got this little play audio button embedded in the vertical in-page slideshow. And once again, if I tap it, it'll start playing. And it gives me the bar showing how much audio is being played. So here we are, we've embedded the HTML overlay into an action hotspot tab using vertical in-page slideshow. Now this example came from a site called Code Canyon, and I'll show it to you here. Oh, just quickly going through, yeah. So here's this is where Pano2VR is. It comes from a funny little company called Loom, Garden Loom Software. They also make a Object to VR version too, and this is a spin version, and allows you to create spins with pop-ups off them and stuff like that. Once again, something that we're planning on doing, and it's in the feature list, but something that we can do now using a product like this. Tumult Hype's not there for some reason, but let me just try again, see if it's there. Well, here we go. Here's Tumult Hype. You can go in there, there's a gallery of different things that people have done in it, different samples, what have you. There's tutorials, and you can get a trial version to download. Okay, so what we want to look at now is these pre-built widgets. We're going to go into Code Canyon, and this is the little application that I bought. And you see down here it's $5. Money well spent. If you want an extended license, it's $25. If you're a bit worried about, you know, putting it into an app or anything like that, then just go for the $25 for the extended license. So basically, that's what we did, came into here. Now, one of the things that you want to make sure that when if you're looking in places like this, or you're looking for code across the web that you can use, is that if you want people to interact with it with fingers and touching, then you need to make sure that it works with touch. Okay, it's very important that it's touch compatible. So let's look at what we've done with this. So if we come into here, into our universal player, okay, if I open this up into HTML, so this is basically what you get when you spend that $5. Okay, so if I tap on that, it's giving me a play. There's also the ability to have different files. You notice the little buttons too for the additional files also show the same progression bar. Okay. So, once again, I do the same thing. I take that basic code and strip everything out. So if we look at that in Dreamweaver, okay, that's what it looks like in Dreamweaver. Yeah, I'll just go to code and I'll show you the one that I've done. Where is it here? Ooh, okay, so here's a weird thing. Sometimes these things actually don't open in Dreamweaver. I'm not quite sure. So then I go to Xcode. Okay, so once again, I've just gone through here and just stripped out some stuff that I really don't need. So any of these comments, I've taken this out. Down in here, I've put some styling. Okay, so you can see here, I wanted to fit inside the vertical in-page slideshow. So I've made the body the same size, height and width as the page inside my InDesign file. And my object, my button, is 50 pixels by 50 pixels, and I want it to be offset by a certain amount, 200 and 100 from the top, okay? And that creates the position for me. So once again, I take this and I just, strip it out to the bare bones, and until I break it, and then I stop stripping out any more code. So once you've got it stripped away, then you can simply sort of add that code into the page, like I've got it into here, or once again in my panoramas, where I've done the same thing. Once again, if I open up the panorama, and here we'll see it I've got it in the landscape mode, and once again I've got the little button down here again. So I've used the same button. I've just put it in two different little places there. So for $5 and a little bit of modifying of HTML, there you've got a cool little MP3 player that you can reskin. And then basically what I do is I've got some files made up that I'll put online if you want to use it. That give you sort of layered files where you can go in and change the different colors and what have you. Okay. Right, so I think that sort of brings us to the end of this webinar. I hope you've learned a little bit more about the sort of the incredible platform Oomph is for building stuff. I just think it's amazing that you can take these HTML files and drop them into place, and everything just works. It's really amazing. So if you have any more questions, please let me know. I'll just put this in here. Good to see. Good to see it spark somebody's interest. That's fantastic. You notice over here on the Web Links 3, I've added links to Learning HQ, Pano2VR, Tumult Height, Code Canyon, and to the HTML audio player. Yeah, but as soon as I can, if this recording's gone really well, I shall put it up in the next couple of days. As I said, I'm off on a panorama photo shoot to Borneo for 12 days, so I'm busily trying to get ready for that. But also, don't forget, here I can tell you where you can go and let me just go to. I'm going to give you a link for the to download the Red 360. Give me 1 sec. Bear with me, I'm just getting a link for you. Okay, hang on a sec. My other computer just went to sleep again. Okay, I'm going to add a new link. Okay, so Red 360 panoramas, that's a link that will take you to the iTunes where you can download the Panorama app for free. So yeah, bear with me, a couple of days it should be out there. Any other questions before we sign off? Oh, my pleasure, Raymond. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think this webinar went a little bit better than the last one. It's much better for me having another machine here. I can see the speed and the way it works. Don't forget to head over to our forums because there's some really cool. There's some cool stuff coming up. In fact, I've just seen some stuff where you can build amazing forms inside Oomph that don't require you to go to like an external page to run the form. Hopefully, I'm going to put that in the next webinar. Also, there's some very cool stuff about long scrolling pages. Hang on a sec. If you're still there, I might be able to show you this. This is pretty cool. Let me see if I've got it handy. Quite sure where it would be, but let's have a look here. Oh, in fact, actually, it might be in here. I might have it loaded. Oh, no, it's not there. Damn. It's very, very cool. Look, I shall post it. I shall post it up on the forums. The trick to, and this is a way that you can put in a 6,000 pixel wide picture and pan smoothly from one side to the other. It is really, really amazing. Adam, yeah, have to find an excuse to use this. Yes. Lots of things. I'm sure there's lots of things you can turn up. Excuses to find. Yeah, so a couple of things here. This form builder, my God, it's so good. Then some of the other things we want to talk about is Smart Fit. Smart Fit is really cool. I'm using that quite a bit now to easily fit objects into containers. What else we want to look at? Yeah, the sliding panel. Yeah, so many things. Anyway, look, I think it's time to call